Thanks, Jasmine. It's just inside 46 and a half minutes to launch. The SpaceX launch team, they're finishing their final review of data from checkouts of Falcon 9 over the last hour. The launch director is about to poll the team for readiness, both to load propellant and to launch. This will be the last poll before liftoff. The 7 SpaceX engineers indicate they are go by electronically voting on an online countdown procedure. We won't hear a verbal poll, something folks may remember from the earlier days of launch and movies like Apollo 13. The launch director is also checking with Dragon mission director and the NASA launch manager to make sure everyone is ready to go. Meanwhile, on the Dragon spacecraft, on the screen you can see the crew arm is still in the service position. The crew is on board Dragon, waiting for next instructions, which will be to stow the arm for launch and to arm the launch escape system. Once the launch director gives final instructions to the launch team, which should be coming up in about 30 seconds, the crew arm sequence will be armed and initiated. We should get a good view of the Axis arm as it swings away from the capsule, taking about 2 minutes to move out of the way. Now the range continues to be go for launch. They're monitoring the area around the pad as well as air and sea space around the flight corridor. And on the weather front, the weather officer gave a fantastic at the T-minus 1 hour briefing. The winds for all conditions of flight, liftoff, contingencies, getting into space, everything looks good both at ground level and upper altitude. So right now we're just waiting to listen to the SpaceX launch director give the poll and then also give the instructions to the team and move into retracting the crew access arm. So we're going to listen for a minute to the countdown net.
Poll is complete and team is ready for propellant load and crew access arm retract. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD and they'll approve aborting the launch auto sequence and proceed into launch abort. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the countdown, operator shall call hold, hold, hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. Operators advise launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. In the event of a fire alarm, key operators will man their post while the alarm is evaluated. In the event that personal safety is threatened, evacuate to the south-facing emergency exit, which leads directly outside. Launch control, you may proceed with arming the crew arm for movement.
Crew access arm retraction started.
There you see a live view of the crew access arm retracting away from Crew Dragon in preparation for launch. The countdown clock continues to tick, and we're now at T-minus 42 minutes and 33 seconds. We're standing by for the completion of the crew access retraction. This is one of the last major visual milestones that we'll see in preparation for liftoff. Shortly thereafter, we should hear the call out that the launch escape system is armed, and from there, we'll hear that Falcon 9 prop load has started, which is one of my favorite milestones of the launch countdown.
We just saw a beautiful shot from inside the White Room as the crew arm was moving away. There it is. The capsule, you can just barely see it in the corner now of that opening where that is where the side hatch was. Where the astronauts ingress Dragon, and now you can see it continuing to swing away from the Falcon 9 rocket and Crew Dragon Endeavour in preparation for launch. That is a really cool angle. And Tracy, as we're watching the crew arm still retracting here, we are about to have the International Space Station fly
Yes.
over us, right?
We are, yes, here at KSC, Kennedy Space Center. It looks like in another minute to the southeast, traveling across east-northeast, the station should be visible overhead.
Crew access arm retraction complete.
Now we just heard confirmation that the crew access arm is done retracting.
Up next, we'll expect to hear a call to arm the launch escape system.
Dragon SpaceX, you are go for Section 7. Close visors and arm launch escape system.
Copy. SpaceX Endeavour visors are down.
Copy, visors down.
Okay, so the crew there reporting that they have closed and locked their visors in place in preparation for the launch escape system arming. The launch escape system is a critical safety feature. This is something that the shuttle did not have. We take very seriously the fact that the astronauts' lives are in our hands, and we take every measure possible to ensure that the crew has options and has an escape in the worst of scenarios. So this is simply a path to safety for the crew in the event that they need to depart the pad in an emergency, and also applies to aborting the mission even after liftoff and through ascent.
And the Crew Dragon Endeavour actually has an enhanced abort capability now. That was one of the improvements made to this capsule after Demo 2, and it increased the propulsion system on Dragon.
Launch escape system is verified armed.
Okay, so that was confirmation that the launch escape system is armed, and so that is what we have to hear before fueling on the Falcon 9 rocket can begin. So we are about just under 4 minutes away from that milestone. But again, we were saying the propulsion system. Oh, there's a shot of the space station. There it is.
Yeah.
Everybody wave.
They're waving down at us. I think they're watching right now. So
They are. You know they are.
yeah,
yes.
hi guys.
Hi.
We see you. So that's super cool. But yeah, the abort system, it's been improved by about 10%. That's the Super Draco thrusters. There's 8 of them built directly into the Crew Dragon, and so that actually allowed for a wider margin in terms of wind speeds. So there's greater opportunities for launch. But weather not looking like much of a concern at all today. In fact, last we heard there's less than 5% chance of violation. So more than 95% go conditions, which is great.
Yeah. Pretty rare for launches from here.
And that launch escape system, how that works is, once the fueling begins at T-minus 35 minutes, if there's any kind of emergency, Crew Dragon can launch itself off the top of the Falcon 9 rocket, and then it would splash down under parachutes off the coast in the Atlantic, and we have rescue teams pre-positioned in the event of an emergency. If that happens, which is highly unlikely, but it's something the NASA and SpaceX and Department of Defense teams practice for extensively. That launch escape system is also equipped to perform an abort after liftoff. We would call that an in-flight launch escape, and that can happen at any point throughout the ascent trajectory.
Yeah, we actually tested this launch escape system in multiple ways. We performed a pad abort test where a Dragon capsule was on the pad and simulated an abort where it took off like a rocket like you've never seen, and deployed parachutes and splashdown in the Atlantic Ocean. We also conducted an in-flight abort test, which was incredible to witness. I mean, it was a test unlike any other that we'd performed before, and where we launched a Falcon 9 rocket with a Dragon on top, and about 100 seconds into flight, simulated an anomaly. Dragon took off and deployed parachutes, splashed down, and so this is a system that we have tested, but never expect to utilize. Once again, the booster that you're looking at now, if you're wondering why it looks a little dirty, that is actually soot that was left from reentry after its last mission. This particular booster supported the Crew 1 mission very recently, and we have, there we can see a photo of our Crew 2 astronauts. Actually, they're holding up their fingers because they have soot. They signed their initials, their names into the soot there in the background. So I've said before, I love the human spaceflight traditions that we have, and I think this is a new one. Tracy, you said it earlier.
Yeah. We never got to draw on the shuttle before we launched, so this is kind of cool.
Yeah, Thomas, they were answering questions about it, and he started to say we carved our initials, and he quickly stopped himself. No, we didn't carve anything into the Falcon 9. We traced our initials in the side of the rocket, and so you could see closely in that photo, if you look, you could see the initials of each astronaut. So that's really cool and something that we look forward to seeing on future reused boosters. This one is set to land.
Load has started.
Okay, we just heard confirmation that fueling has begun on the Falcon 9 rocket. And this first stage booster is set to land on a SpaceX drone ship at sea after liftoff. We are now at T-minus 34 minutes, 30 seconds and counting from Crew Dragon's third launch with astronauts and the first for 2021. Today begins the next 6-month rotation mission to the International Space Station. The launch escape system is armed, which happened just before fueling began at T-minus 35 minutes. The Dragon capsule was loaded with propellants about a week and a half ago, just a few miles down the road at what we call Dragon Land. And in order to fly, Dragon needs a fuel and an oxidizer. And Kate, I'll let you talk more about the fuel.
Yeah, so for that fuel, we use monomethylhydrazine, or MMH, and nitrogen tetroxide, or NTO, for the oxidizer. Together, these two propellants feed the Draco engines that maneuver Dragon on orbit, as well as the 8 Super Draco engines that would power the launch escape system in an abort scenario.
And again, now that the fueling is underway on Falcon 9, that means the 8 Super Draco engines built directly into Crew Dragon are ready, if needed, to launch the capsule off of the Falcon 9 rocket in an instant should there be any kind of emergency associated with the rocket or the launch pad. The NASA and SpaceX teams have trained extensively for exactly that type of contingency, along with the Department of Defense Detachment 3, who does a fantastic job in those training scenarios. Now over to SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne for an operations update. John?
Well, we are counting down those final minutes, and everything's still looking good for Falcon 9 and Dragon for an on-time launch just under 33 minutes from now. Falcon 9 did begin propellant loading just a couple of minutes ago. We heard it. Now, the first and second stages of Falcon 9 are each loaded with 2 liquid propellants. One is fuel. That's loaded into the tank at the bottom of each stage. The other is an oxidizer, and that goes, obviously, into the tank at the top of each stage. Now, the fuel that we use to power the Merlin engines is a refined kerosene called RP1. And the oxidizer loaded on each stage is densified liquid oxygen called LOX. Densified means that it is kept much colder than typical for launch vehicles, and it takes up less volumes. So this allows us to get more oxidizer loaded onto the first and second stages. Now, to ignite the fuel and oxidizer in the Merlin rocket engine, we use an ignition fluid called T-tub. When T-tab comes in contact with oxygen, it burns, and it gives off a green-colored flame. Now, once we've got the flame going, we add the kerosene fuel into the Merlin chamber, and the engine ramps up to full power. You might see the green flash just as the second stage engine ignites following stage separation. Now, currently, we've just begun. The first stage fuel tank is about right now a little under 10% full. The first stage is the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle you see on your screen. The white cylinder topped off by the black cylinder, that makes up the first stage. And then the top 1/3 underneath the Dragon capsule, that's our second stage. Now at this time, the second stage fuel tank is about 8% full. Now the fuel tank, if you were to zoom in, that's where the NASA meatball logo is positioned. And right above it, you can just make out the red NASA worm logo, and that's where the liquid oxygen tank is on the second stage. And there's a closer view. Now, in addition to loading the fuel, we're also loading oxygen, the liquid oxygen, onto the first stage. We won't start liquid oxygen loading on the second stage until T-minus 16 minutes and 30
Start at
seconds.
stage 1 cryo.
And liquid oxygen will continue loading on both stages until the last few minutes of the countdown. Helium loading into pressure vessels is also underway. We use that to pressurize the tanks in flight as the propellant is pulled out by the Merlin turbopumps. On board the Dragon spacecraft, you can see here in a close-up, the astronauts are monitoring systems while the propellant is loaded into the Falcon 9. The crew training in the simulator included playback of sounds that we've recorded in the Dragon capsule during recent flights. So they get an idea what all that hissing and popping and banging is from the vent valves and the pressurization systems. Now the range continues to report no problems. They are go to support launch. And the weather also looks good. I mentioned the T-minus 1 hour briefing. We called it fantastic. Currently, we don't have anything that we are tracking that could be a concern. We have a very small possibility of a pop-up rain shower, but nothing showing up. So right now, 29 minutes, 40 seconds ago, it looks like we've got good weather. Now, as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch window. So at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we'll have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity coming in 3 days. So right now, let's turn it back over to Jesse and Gary for an overview of events that are going to happen after the liftoff of Falcon 9.
Great news, John. For Crew 2, the astronauts' flight to station will take about 23 hours, and their journey will be fairly similar to the trip Crew 1 made in November of last year.
All right, as we wait T0 in just about 29 minutes, the ground operations teams are doing a series of systems checks to make sure both Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready for launch. You're looking at a live view of our teams at the Cape as they prepare for liftoff. As we wait for the launch clock to hit 0, we wanted to give you an overview of what the ascent portion of the mission will look like.
Once we hit T0 and a successful launch occurs, we will watch Falcon 9 and Dragon lift off from historic launch pad 39A and make their ascent.
At about 50 seconds into the flight, Falcon 9 engines will throttle up to help pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure on the rocket, or what we typically refer to as max Q. It's worth noting that once we hit max Q, the vehicle will be going supersonic.
Once we are through the period of maximum dynamic pressure, we can throttle up our 9 Merlin engines again. And from there, at about 2.5 minutes into flight, we have a series of 3 events that will happen in rapid succession.
First is MECO, or main engine cutoff. This is where all 9 Merlin 1D engines shut off in preparation for stage separation, which is our second event. This is where the first stage detaches from the second stage, with the first stage making its way back to Earth for landing as the second stage continues on its journey with the third event. SES-1, or second stage engine start number 1, is where the MVAC engine lights up and propels the second stage along with our Crew 2 astronauts to orbit.
As Stage 2 heads towards its targeted drop-off orbit, Stage 1 will execute 2 burns in order to make its way back to Earth. The first is the entry burn, where 3 of the 9 M1D engines will reignite and then shut down. And this helps to slow the stage down in preparation for entry back into the upper parts of the Earth's atmosphere.
While the first stage is heading back to Earth, the second stage will cut off its 1 Merlin engine that was ignited right after stage separation. Once this happens, we'll wait for confirmation of a good orbital insertion.
About 90 seconds after Dragon gets into orbit, Falcon 9 will land back on Earth. The landing burn is just a single engine burn, powerful enough to bring the vehicle's speed down rapidly in order to land on the drone ship about 9.5 minutes into the mission.
While Falcon 9 first stage is landing, Dragon is preparing to separate from the second stage. At about 3 minutes after the second stage gets into orbit, we should have a great view of Dragon with its 4-person crew drifting away from the second stage. Once Dragon is a short distance away, it will begin checking out its Draco maneuvering thrusters to make sure Dragon continues to increase separation distance from the second stage. It's worth noting that these are not the Super Draco engines that would be used during an abort scenario.
About 40 seconds after separation, Dragon's nose cone deploy sequence will begin. It will take roughly 4 minutes for the nose cone hooks to unlatch and open, exposing its guidance navigation controls, or what we call GNC, that will help Dragon autonomously fly to the space station.
And lastly, once the nose cone is deployed, the remaining Draco thrusters on the forward bulkhead will be checked. From there, over the next 23+ hours, Dragon will be in its rendezvous and approach phases, undergoing a number of phasing burns as it makes its way to station.
Flight engineers, except for JAXA's Aki Hoshide, who will take command of the space station from NASA's Shannon Walker, just before Crew 1 comes home. He'll be the station commander until the fall, when he'll hand the reins to European Space Agency Thomas Pesquet for the final part of their mission. Flight Director Paul Kanya is on console now, leading flight controllers in Houston for launch, and Flight Director Scott Stover will lead teams for docking tomorrow. Just a reminder that a launch today will take about 23.5 hours to get to station, with a docking to the Node 2 forward port scheduled tomorrow at 4:10 a.m. Central. Once Dragon is docked to the station, the team here in Houston will assist Dragon and space station astronauts with leak checks as they will work to open hatches on both Dragon
and SpaceX Crew Dragon, and we can see liquid oxygen venting off the rocket. That is normal and expected. It is now T-minus 23 minutes, 50 seconds and counting from the third astronaut launch from U.S. soil in the past year, and the first with 2 international partners aboard. Commander Shane Kimbrough, pilot Megan MacArthur, and mission specialist Thomas Pesquet and Aki Hoshide are strapped into their seats inside the Crew Dragon Endeavour on top. There's an inside view. We can see them live as the Falcon 9 rocket fueling operation is well underway now. The launch escape system is armed, and that means the Crew Dragon is prepared to launch itself away from the Falcon 9 rocket in case of an emergency on the pad or after liftoff. So far, operations look and sound as expected, and we are counting down to liftoff at 5:49 Eastern Time.
This mission is the continuation of rotational crew flights to the International Space Station from U.S. soil on private rockets and spacecraft. This wouldn't have been possible without the success of the NASA SpaceX Demo 2 test flight last year and the safe delivery of the Crew 1 astronauts to the space station last fall for a long-duration mission. Those Crew 1 astronauts are preparing to return to Earth shortly after Crew 2 arrives at station.
And this will be the first time we'll see 2 Crew Dragons docked to the space station at the same time. Crew 1's Resilience and Crew 2's Endeavour, that's on the launch pad right now.
With the arrival of the Crew 2 team, I believe that'll bring the head count on station to 11 people. And as much as I love camping, that does sound like it would be a little crowded up there.
Yeah, you know, you counted 11 people on board the station, 9 of them in the U.S. segment. We've got 4 crew quarters, which are basically crew bedrooms. We've got both commanders of the Dragons sleeping in their vehicles. That leaves 3 people needing a place to sleep. That's Suichi, Shannon, and Victor. They'll be in the gym, the Columbus, and the airlock, respectively. So you could say it's quite a full house. They'll be camping out, rolling out their sleeping bags on rack fronts. So it'll be tight.
What a great benefit to being commander. You have your own private suite.
With windows. And yeah, it's a nice place to be.
Yeah, and that's honestly the window shots that we have been receiving from the crew have been one of my favorite things from the Crew 1 team up there, and even Bob and Doug whenever they were up there as well. Just the view outside of the Crew Dragon window, it's actually my phone background right now.
Well,
And it's just incredible, and I love that we get to, that they share their perspective with us from above.
Let's give you a quick recap of who the astronauts are sitting inside the capsule here in the foreground. Sitting closest to the front of your screen is Commander Shane. A total of 189 days in space and performed 6 spacewalks.
Pilot Megan MacArthur will join Expedition 65 once they arrive at the International Space Station, with Aki Hoshide taking over as commander of the station right before Crew 1 departs.
And as we're looking at a live view of the pad, again, fueling is underway. We heard a call out during those bio recaps that the RP1 load is complete on the second stage. And we have a really special treat if we could take a view of Bob Behnken's spacesuit. We have that. So again, looking live at the pad, Falcon 9 will have 1.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff, and we've heard it sounds like a gorilla sitting on your chest. Would you say that's accurate, Tracy?
Yeah. I've never had actually a gorilla on my chest, but I imagine that one would be that heavy. That the feeling that you have in your chest is pretty significant.
Once again, the white cloud that we see there is expected, totally normal. That's just the liquid oxygen vaporizing essentially as it comes into contact with this humid Florida air. As a point of reference, the liquid oxygen that we load on board Falcon 9 is super chilled to help densify that liquid oxygen. When I say super chilled, I mean really, really cold. We're talking like negative 336 degrees. So, of course, whenever it comes into ambient air, it will turn into its gaseous state.
Which LOX load has started.
Okay, and there we just heard the call out that second stage LOX load has just begun.
And so the mission teams that we've seen in control rooms from Kennedy Space Center to Houston to Hawthorne are all laser focused on keeping this crew safe from this point and all the way to the space station and back home in 6 months. We had a chance to ask about their mindset right now from a couple.
We feel like those crew members are in our hands, and we need to be there, thinking straight, making sure we're making the right decisions so that we're getting that crew safely to the International Space Station.
And that was Kathy Leaders and Steve Stitch, who have been in charge of the NASA team for much of the life of the commercial crew program and have worked very closely with the folks on the SpaceX side who have gotten to know these astronauts on a personal level and have taken such care in all of the checkouts and the paranoia reviews, as they're called, to make sure that they're constantly looking for problems to uncover, to make sure that every leaf, every stone is unturned to make this flight as safe as possible for the crew. Again, it is now T-minus 14 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. Liftoff will be about 1 hour before sunrise here on Florida's Space Coast, and if we're lucky, we may see a beautiful contrail at first light. At the time of launch at 5:49 and 2 seconds Eastern Time, the space station will be flying 258 miles over the Indian Ocean south of Sri Lanka. And now with T-minus 13 minutes, 50 seconds and counting, we want to focus on the pad as we proceed through the final stretch of the countdown. We will turn it over to Hawthorne to take us through launch at 5:49 this morning. John?
We're inside T-minus 14 minutes. Everything is still looking good for launch of Falcon 9 and Dragon, 49 minutes and 2 seconds after the hour. Falcon 9 began propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes. Loading of the RP1 fuel onto stage 2 is complete. Fuel loading is continuing on the first stage. We're over half full, and it'll finish at T-minus 6 minutes. The densified liquid oxygen loading is continuing on the first stage, and we began loading liquid oxygen onto the second stage a few minutes ago. The liquid oxygen loading will wrap up T-minus 3 minutes on the first stage, about T-minus 2 minutes on the second stage. Checkouts of the thrust vector controllers, what we call TVC wiggles, are coming up, along with throttle valve checkouts on the engines. That's where we move the engines a little bit, make sure the hydraulics are ready to go. Currently, the range is go, ready to support, working no issues, and we continue to have good weather both at the launch pad at ground level, at the upper altitude winds, and downrange at the contingency landing sites. On the Dragon spacecraft, the Dragon mission director and team, they're reporting no issues. Their communication checkouts are complete. The crew access arm is retracted, as you see on your monitors, away from the vehicle. The launch escape system is armed. The crew is strapped in and ready to go. Final instructions of the crew will be coming at T-minus 10 minutes. They'll configure their displays for launch. That'll give them insight into how the launch is proceeding, and it provides constant updates on vehicle health. And for Dragon at T-minus 5 minutes, we'll hear it enter terminal count as they transition to internal power. Now we're going to hear continued callouts on the countdown net as we get close to T-minus 0 and to the liftoff. Now, Gary, we talked about the ascent sequence of events that are coming up here. You and Jesse went through that a little while ago, but we're also going to have abort modes. Can you explain a little bit about what the abort mode callouts are that we might hear?
That's right, John. We're continuing to track that the Falcon 9 and Dragon are looking good for launch, but just in case anything were to happen, Dragon is fully prepared to initiate an abort and use those Super Draco engines to escape from a speeding Falcon 9. On the way uphill, you'll hear a series of letter and number combinations. Those will denote the stage that the rocket is on and the abort zone that we're on as well. On first stage, you'll hear abort zones A and B. That will cover the Falcon 9's ascent up to about the northern border of North Carolina, about 7.5 to 8 miles in altitude. And the stage 2 will have stage 2A through E. Mostly it will be stage A, or stage 2A abort zone, but towards the end of the 6 minutes that stage 2 will be firing, you'll hear the numbers start going out from B to E, with E being an abort to orbit. All of these capabilities enabled on the Dragon spacecraft to make sure that the crew will be delivered safely into orbit. Inside 10 minutes and 30 seconds, we should be hearing some final status, maybe a good luck and Godspeed from some of the ground teams here, ensuring that the crew is ready to go, that Falcon 9, Dragon, and all the support teams are ready for launch.
Dragon, SpaceX, confirmed crew displays are configured for launch.
Displays are configured for launch.
SpaceX copies. Shane, Megan, Aki, Tama. We're thrilled to have crew on board Endeavour once again, and truly honored to have you all at the helm. It's been a pleasure training alongside you ahead of this historic launch. We wish you a great mission, good luck, and enjoy the ride.
Thank you, Chad, Christian, Frank, and all the teams who got our crew and vehicle ready for this mission. I want to say a special thank you to our families and friends. We're incredibly grateful for your support and sacrifice during our training and our upcoming flight. Our crew is flying astronauts from NASA, ESA, and JAXA, which hasn't happened in over 20 years. We're excited to represent our nations, agencies, and all of humanity. Off the Earth, for the Earth, Endeavour is ready to go.
All right, some celebratory handshakes from inside the Crew Dragon. That was the voice of the Corps, Chad Healy, here in Mission Control Hawthorne. Next series of events, John, will be the engine chill. Everything's looking good so far.
Yeah, it is. We're actually watching the fuel trim valves on the Merlin 1D engines going through some checkouts right now. And as you said, at T-minus 7 minutes, we're going to start a sequence of events that begins with opening the pre-valves. Currently, the liquid oxygen, the kerosene fuel on the Falcon 9 first, second stages is separated from the Merlin engines. T-minus 7 minutes, just over a minute from now, we open the pre-valves. That allows propellant down to the top of the engine or the inlet to the turbo pumps. At the same time, we open up bleed valves on the turbopumps, and that allows a little bit of that densified ultra-cold liquid oxygen to flow through the pump and to chill down the liquid oxygen pump. That way, when we get to T-2 seconds and we spin the pumps up and everything comes to full power, we're not pulling very cold liquid oxygen through a warm pump. So as that cools it down right now, that'll get it ready for that ignition sequence in the last couple of seconds. So we should hear that call out that the stage 1 engine chill has started. You'll also hear in flight, about a minute and a half, 2 minutes into flight, MVAC chill has begun. That's also a repeat sequence there, where we open the bleed valve and begin chilling that engine one more time before it lights after stage separation. Right now we're waiting to see the pre-valves come open and the chill begin.
Stage 1 engine chill has started.
Yep, and there's the call out. We've got indication pre-valves coming open on the engines, and we have begun to chill in the Merlin engines for flight.
That's right, John. Now inside 6 minutes, 40 seconds. RP1 rocket-grade kerosene is completely filled in the second stage. We're anticipating about 30 more seconds for the first stage to be completely filled with that RP1 refined kerosene. The liquid oxygen will continue to flow through the first and second stages up to the final minutes before
Stage
T0.
1 RP load is complete.
All right, confirmation. We have 100% fill of RP1 on both the first and second stages. 6 minutes to go until an instantaneous launch window today. The next milestone will be Dragon to transition to configure for terminal count. And this time, terminal count, the Dragon will be on internal power, no longer relying on the lines from the ground. And from there, the Falcon 9 propellant tanks will pressurize for strong back retract. That'll be another visual milestone. The clamps just below the Dragon's unpressurized trunk will open, and the strong back will tilt back just 2 degrees. Then right after liftoff, back to 45 degrees. Again, RP1 kerosene, both on the first and second stages. Liquid oxygen continues to flow through on the first and second stages. That very densified, very cold liquid oxygen.
Dragon has transitioned to configure for terminal count.
Falcon 9 propellant tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
All right, John, good calls and right on time. Dragon is now on internal power.
Okay, next major event coming up is going to be opening the clamp arms around the second stage in preparation for retracting the strong back away from the vehicle to get ready for liftoff.
Strong back is retracting.
We heard the call out, strong back is beginning to retract. We're into the automated sequence. We should see the clamp arms that are just visible there around the top of the second stage begin to open up. Once they are open, then the strong back will begin to move away from the Falcon 9. Watching the sequence, a nice view from up on top of the fixed service structure. The arms are opening. And we're beginning to recline away from the Falcon 9. We'll move the strong back 2 degrees away from the Falcon 9. That'll get it ready for liftoff. And at T0, when the flight computer commands liftoff, the hydraulics on the strong back will pull it to a position 45 degrees away from the Falcon 9, giving it the clearance for launch. So right now, the strong back is moving away. Everything proceeding nominally.
It's great to hear, John. We're also anxiously awaiting the liquid oxygen complete on the first stage. Should hear that call very shortly.
Dragon has transitioned to terminal count and is on internal power.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Okay, we've heard the call out. Stage 1 LOX load is complete. We're loading liquid oxygen on the second stage for about another 30 seconds or so. Once we get the liquid oxygen load complete on the second stage, the propellant line that runs up the side of the strongback that carries liquid oxygen, we'll vent that line down to make sure there's no liquid in it when we get to liftoff. When we do that, we open up valves on the strongback, and as Kate and Marie were talking earlier, when we vent off that very cold gaseous oxygen, it'll merge with the warm, humid Florida air, and you'll get a large white plume of condensation off of the back of the strongback. That'll be normal, coming about a minute and a half before launch. Everything continuing to look good.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
Dragon is in auto idle.
All right, with that, the Falcon 9 is fully fueled. We have fuel on both the first and second stages, and both stages are filled with liquid oxygen.
Gas closeout has started. Expect loud venting.
Dragon is also in auto idle. The flight computers on Dragon, maintaining their calculations, standing by, waiting for the T0 mark. 1 minute, 15 seconds until launch. The 1 minute mark, Dragon will transition to countdown, and the flight termination system will arm the computers on Falcon 9. We'll be talking to the computers on Dragon and can issue an abort if necessary.
FTS is armed. Falcon 9 is in startup and is now controlling.
Dragon is in countdown.
All right, 50 seconds to go. Everything is ready for an on-time launch today.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
Copy, go for launch.
Ground teams are ready, and the crew inside Dragon is ready. 30 seconds to go until launch.
Seconds. T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Mission and liftoff. Godspeed, Endeavour and Crew 2.
Copy, 1 Alpha.
Endeavour launches once again. 4 astronauts from 3 countries on Crew 2, now making their way to the one and only International Space Station. The vehicle is pitching downrange. 9 Merlin engines on the first stage, providing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Hearing good calls on first stage performance so far.
We are T plus 30 seconds into the second rotational crew mission on board Dragon and Falcon 9. Falcon 9 will be throttling down the 9 Merlin engines shortly here in preparation for maximum dynamic pressure. And there's that call out for the throttle down. Maximum dynamic pressure, max Q, is the largest structural load that the vehicle sees throughout ascent. So throttling down does help us pass. Throttling down helps us pass through this period, which should be coming here shortly.
Max Q.
There's that call out that we have just passed through max Q.
Stage 1 throttle up.
And
1
we can
Bravo.
Copy, 1 Bravo.
All right, 1 Bravo is the second abort mode on the first stage. The first stage continues to fire for 2 minutes, 35 seconds. 1.5 minutes into today's flight. Falcon 9 now traveling at more than 1,500 miles an hour.
MVAC engine chill has started.
All right, the engine chill for the second stage single Merlin engine has started. About 30 more seconds of the first stage firing to bring our 4 astronauts into orbit.
Now from here, coming up in about 20 some seconds, we're going to have 3 major milestones. We'll have shutdown of the 9 Merlin engines. We're beginning to throttle them down. We will then get stage separation.
Throttle down.
And then we will get ignition of the second stage engine to propel Dragon and the Falcon 9 second stage into orbit.
Two
Nico.
Alpha.
Copy, 2 Alpha.
Confirmed.
Acquisition of signal, yes.
And ignition.
And we have ignition of the second stage. You see the green flash of that T-TEB fluid. The expansion nozzle on the second stage Merlin vacuum glowing that bright red that we like to see. Good performance on the second stage so far.
And on the left side of your screen, we saw the exhaust of the second stage engine streaming past the first stage as the grid fins are coming out. We also briefly had a view of the lights of Central Florida in the background. Currently, the first stage is continuing to coast up to apogee. It's unpowered. It'll reach a peak height and then begin to descend back down toward the Earth's atmosphere, where it will light 3 engines to slow down in preparation for what will be a landing burn on the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. You can see the grid fins are deployed right now. The first stage
Dragon,
pulsing.
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
We're pulsing the thrusters.
Signal of Bermuda.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
And we hear a call out from the crew, nominal trajectory. So we're beginning to move the first stage into position so it can do the entry burn.
Four minutes, 15 seconds into today's flight. Second stage propelling our 4 astronauts up the eastern seaboard. We'll continue to fire. It's a 6-minute burn to deliver the astronauts into orbit. We'll wait for a cue for good orbital insertion after that. Meanwhile, we'll be hearing check-ins on the vehicle's trajectory and performance, as well as check-ins with some of the ground stations as it passes over throughout the 6 minutes of the second stage firing.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Getting good views of both the first and second stage from the onboard cameras.
Acquisition of signal, boss.
The New Hampshire tracking station has acquired the second stage telemetry signal. Meanwhile, the first stage has reached apogee, and it's now beginning to descend from a height. It's currently about 167 kilometers up, and in a few minutes we will get the entry burn of the second stage, of the first stage.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Right on cue, those check-ins on the second stage performance. Once a minute, everything's looking good on that second stage.
Propulsion is nominal.
Stage 2 continues to climb. The vehicle now exceeding 8,000 miles an hour at an altitude of about 124 miles.
And just about 1 minute from now, we will begin the entry burn of the first stage. That'll consist of lighting the center engine, and then shortly afterwards, 2 more engines for a 3-engine burn to slow down the first stage in preparation for entering the Earth's atmosphere.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Another check-in, and the crew confirming they're hearing the same thing. The vehicle about to exceed about 10,000 miles per hour.
Meanwhile, first stage down at 90 kilometers, getting ready to relight 3 engines for the entry burn.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
We've got the center engine ignition, and there come the 2 side engines. Now this entry burn will last about 29 seconds. It's going to significantly slow down the vehicle in preparation for hitting the denser part of the Earth's atmosphere. Entry burn complete. We're down below 35 kilometers, continuing to look good on the first stage, heading to the Atlantic Ocean for a landing on the drone ship.
While second stage is less than a minute away from cutoff.
Stage 2 in terminal guidance.
Shannon.
Copy, Shannon.
Shannon called out at the back end of stage 2, a few seconds until cutoff.
MVAC shutdown.
Dragon SpaceX launch escape system disarmed.
Launch escape system disarmed. Copy.
Dragon SpaceX nominal orbit insertion.
Copy. Nominal orbital insertion.
All right, the Falcon 9 second stage has done its job, delivering our 4 crew into orbit.
You hear the applause here in Hawthorne. We're waiting to get a video signal back from the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. And the view from the onboard camera, we saw it just briefly. It looks like first stage on the drone ship. Getting views of the Dragon trunk. So the first stage is on the drone ship, successfully landed. And more importantly, second stage is in a nominal orbit with the Dragon spacecraft getting ready for some important events coming up, Gary.
That's right. About 2 more minutes. The Dragon and the second stage of the Falcon 9 will be in a coast phase. It'll take that long until the spacecraft separates from the Falcon 9. Of course, both now in a nominal orbit. It's great to see some of the views of the Earth as it passes by over the North Atlantic Ocean. All right, we're getting shots of the crew in orbit. I'm looking for that 0G indicator. Can't seem to see it in this shot, but we have a minute to go until we have spacecraft separation. Dragon traveling at nearly 17,000 miles per hour at an altitude of 124 miles. Again, the 4-person crew of Endeavour is in orbit right now. Less than 30 seconds until we have spacecraft separation. Ten seconds to spacecraft separation. We should hear words from the core here in Mission Control Hawthorne once we have successful separation.
Dragon separation confirmed.
Dragon, SpaceX, Falcon team wishes you a great rest of your trip. Say hi to the crew of Dragon who's waiting for lunch and let them know your rocket is home safe. Thanks for flying our first flight-proven, crewed Falcon 9. See you airside, Crew 2.
Thank you very much. We're great. It's glad to be back in space for all of us, and we'll send our regards to Crew 1 when we get there. Thanks.
Absolutely stunning views from both inside the cabin, seeing the excitement of our 4-person crew inside Endeavour, and watching Endeavour drift away from the camera on the second stage as the Earth passes by on an orbital sunrise.
SpaceX Endeavour week.
And Endeavour, you cut out a little bit there. If the question was if you're go to open visors, you are go to open visors at this time.
Copy and work. Thanks.
All right, 13 and a half minutes past liftoff. The crew is in orbit, traveling at nearly 17,000 miles an hour.
Well, Gary, I don't know about you, but that was a great countdown. Everything sounded great. Right on time,
Dragon,
actually a
SpaceX,
little
we
ahead
see
of time.
a nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts.
Got a good orbit out of Falcon 9, and first
Copy,
stage
great
landed
news,
on the
thanks.
drone ship. And we're in the sunlight over the Atlantic Ocean with the Dragon spacecraft. All in all, a great day.
I think everybody's jealous of the crew in orbit right now, John. These views, even just from the cameras, are absolutely stunning. It was great to see our crew members get into orbit. They already performed successful checkouts of the 12 service section Dracos around Dragon. The next milestone will be the deployment of the nose cone. That'll be about a 5-minute process, but that'll expose the forward bulkhead Dracos and prepare them for checkout. There's a phase burn. There's 5 major burns that are needed to get the Crew Dragon up to rendezvous with the International Space Station over the next 23 hours. And so that first phase burn is coming up real soon in about 35 minutes, actually less than 35 minutes. And Jesse, I don't know if you could see the 0G indicator, but I was told it's a penguin. I'm trying to look for it.
I'm looking for it too. Keep an eye out on that left-hand screen.
Meanwhile, the Dragon is configured for a nose cone deployment. We'll stand by for when that sequence starts. The nose cone itself opens just beyond 90 degrees, about 105 degrees, to expose the forward bulkhead Dracos. Those forward bulkhead Dracos, 4 of them at the very top of the Dragon, will do the bulk of the work when it comes to firing the Draco engines for minutes at a time to increase the Dragon's speed, altitude, and phasing to catch up with the International Space Station again over the next 23 hours. Meanwhile, we're still getting camera views from the second stage, looking at that expansion nozzle. Did its work beautifully to deliver the 4 crew into orbit. Dragon over the North Atlantic Ocean.
And Gary, this is John. I think I heard a call out on one of the Dragon nets that the first set of nose cone hooks is open. So it sounds like that sequence is going well.
Very good. Well, from here in Hawthorne, it was very exciting to see the